65% of startups die because of co-founder conflict. And we almost became that statistic where we went from almost breaking up to building a business worth hundreds of millions of dollars to even me getting to officiate his wedding as his best man, which was such a cool memory. I can tell you that we did not get lucky. It's because we followed a couple key principles that you're gonna learn here today.
I think we were close to dying like dozens of times, but yes. Still here.
We've had many fights, and we will help you guys figure out how to get through yours.
We never got into a fist fight though.
Yes, no fist fights, just lots of back and forth. Vitali and I run a company called Stan, which we've scaled over the last 2 years to over $30 million in annualized revenue. We have a team of 50 awesome people. Through that journey, there have been many ups and downs, and so we're gonna walk you through our story as co-founders, first how we met, how we almost broke up, and then what saved us. With that being said, we're gonna cheers first.
Going down the memory lane.
Yes. And you know what's really funny about this is literally last week, Vitali told me that he had completely given up drinking for the rest of his life, and now here he is. Because I was like, we gotta drink sake for this.
It brings us to lesson number 1, company first.
Cheers, dude.
Cheers.
All right, so now that the food is here, we're gonna tell you the story of how we met. So our first ever co-founder date.
It's like a breakup moment, it's like how we met.
Truly, truly. If there's anything you get from all of this, it's that approaching a healthy co-founder relationship is truly just like approaching a healthy, successful marriage. With that being said, I think it's worth talking about our first co-founder date, which is a Zoom date, which I would say like didn't go super well.
I remember not being impressed, but I don't remember.
Fuck you, dude.
So
Very candid.
Yeah, because like we got introduced by a shared customer,
Yes.
right? Invest with us. And I was about to hop on a customer interview with him, and as we were catching up, he's like, hey, I know this other dude, John, who is building this company Stan for creators back in the day it was. He's like, do you want to go chat with him? So it's like, I at the time was not looking for a co-founder or wasn't like intentionally going in any particular direction besides just trying to figure out what I was working on. So I showed up to a call with no expectation at all. So I left it with, and I was like, I guess this is a dude working on a similar thing. Good to know. I'm curious, what was your expectation going into that call?
Well, I was looking to see if I was gonna have a co-founder.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so, okay, I'm learning this for the first time. You were just going in like, who's this guy? So I think for me, you showed up like a hardo, right? And you were just like this Russian software engineer, so direct to business, super candid. But what I mean that is like, Vitali at the time, you came on really, like you were very serious, right? You were like all business and very cut to the chase rational, and I think very skeptical.
Yeah, I'm like, small talk is for losers.
Yes. We felt Vitali grow in this way.
But we got to know about each other where it's like, oh, there is a guy, John, who is like building something similar, and that resonates with what I'm trying to build. One of the stories I wanted to share, I actually don't know if John knows about it, is the circumstances like at which I was making a decision to work on Stan at the time. When John and I met, I was in this interesting stage in my career where like I had a very comfortable big tech job. I just got an offer from another company that increased my compensation there by a factor of 3x that I had an option to accept.
I didn't know this.
You didn't know this. So it's like it's 2021, like big tech is like highly overpaid. If I took this and then I would multiply the number over the upcoming years, like I would probably like objectively retire by now. And it's like, I look at this on my table. John and I are like late in our conversation. And then there's the other company that I'm working on, Vinny at the time, that was my project that I probably dedicated a year and a half of my life to. Where it's like, to me, the decision is like, I have a safe, like for sure path to take. I have my idea that I can keep working on indefinitely. As in, it's like, as a technology person, there is actually very few needs that you have for money. You can just kind of keep chasing your curiosity until you find something. So it's like, I don't need to run my decisions by anyone. It's like, I'm very happy doing whatever I want at my like own full discretion. And then there is this kind of third opportunity where I can kind of put this on the side and like go work on something kind of similar but different. Kind of coming from the place where you have enough conviction in yourself, knowing that whichever path you're going to pick, you're going to be successful. To me, it actually came to finding the why behind the decision. And I think what was really kind of eye-opening, that like why I went all in, like heads down, is because I thought through all the possible outcomes, and I genuinely believe that if you and I worked together, like we would go significantly farther. Like if you imagine the potential path, this is like a 100x to 1000x return on your time just because of the amplification working with someone who is so complementary but so centered in the core gives you, where it's like by yourself, no matter what path you choose, the probability is significantly higher. For me, being able to just recognize the potential and just knowing that only going 100% and you would be able to achieve that, I think fundamentally brought me to the decision to say yes, and never regretted it since.
Which reminds me of the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. There's lots of shit that comes with trying to go together, of figuring out how to interact with other human beings and working with them, because the rational reasons to work together as the kind of visionary storyteller and like the software engineering execution systems builder were there. I think there was probably some sort of like shared kernel of like, we should keep going in this conversation, even though the first one wasn't amazing.
I think what happened for me from what I recollect is like, I did show up to the call without like a clear intention. Or like whatever Russ told me like was probably like not what you were imagining.
Yeah.
But I think you closed the call by and it's like, would you potentially be interested in doing this together? Which is like, it sounds like you weren't like bought into this, but just putting it like, it's a possibility. And I took this away and it's like, do I want to do this together with like someone in the first place? And then it's like if I want to do it with someone, like, would I want to do it with you? And that was my premise for exploration going forward. And I think that's why I picked up the second call and then we went from there.
And I think it's now important to dive into how we went from having a couple calls together to being like, okay, we're going to get into business together and basically get married together. If you really view this decision that seriously, it really changes your lens. And so I think one of the first most important lessons that we can share with folks is how we've started building conviction and deciding like, hey, I actually really want to work with this person and build something with them.
I'm very curious what it was for you.
Do you want to share yours first?
I think the thing that happened next, you wanted to do a walkthrough of Vinny where I gave you a demo. And you gave me a walkthrough of Stan where I remember being impressed by the sleekness of the design. I remember the other tangible signal that actually made a difference to me, because it's like there is John, the potential co-founder, and then there's actually the business that we would be operating together. So it's like the first thing that I want to see is like, hey, can I get into like your Stripe and see what's going on there? What I saw, there were a few customers, free customers at the time, but 3 of them together were making over $50,000 on the platform. The component that stuck with me there is when I looked at the software that John built,
Stan was only 6 weeks old at this point.
What I found genuinely impressive is if I was to look at the business and where it's going, just realization that John, with what he had at the time as a non-technical person, been able to build something that helped generate $50,000 for like real humans in a market that didn't really exist at the time. I'm like, how do you do that? And then from that point of view, I was more curious in John as a person who actually made that happen. So in the follow-up conversations that we had, I approached it with much more curiosity in mind, where it's like I wanted to understand like how you think, what you see for this business going forward, like what makes you special. And I think from then I started paying attention. To me, the buy-in was more of an kind of organic evolution. As we were talking about the business and the vision, like I started seeing that you have thought through this to a degree where it's like it can actually be a really big business if we get it done. And I saw validation in what you've achieved like at the time. So I was like, well, if you went together at it and I can bring the entire software and technology piece, which effectively means you're going to be so much more successful because of this, so you can focus 100% of your time doing what you're best in the world at. How far we can go is like, well, we can go pretty far. And then as we were talking about, I think it was the 3rd or 4th call at the time, like about values and how we grew up. I remember this now, the clarity of thought that we shared 2 things in common that our story clearly demonstrates and where we were at the time is absolute uncompromisable integrity. That's something that's very important for both of us. And just the hustler mentality of getting shit done. The way John and I apply that hustler mentality, we apply it in our separate kind of field, but like this notion where you don't stop until you finish spoke very strongly in like everything that we've done throughout the dating period. So I think for me in that month of us founder dating, we just built the level of trust that I actually haven't been able to build with any other person at such a short timeline. And to me, that trust plus the vision of the business of where we were going, I was like, I can do my part in getting us there. And I believe that John can do his part in getting us there. And that's why I bet on the business and bet on us.
There were 2 specific moments as you shared your basically childhood story, your life story with me, that got me to really believe and buy in and realize that we were very similar despite having grown up in very different places. Number 1 being you telling me the story of how you made money growing up packing parachutes.
Because I was 13.
Because you were 13. And I also had a job as a kid to pay for like literally living and staying alive. And it was that plus the fact that you immigrated to college in the West without speaking a lick of English at 18, studying chemical engineering, also took on a ton of student loans as well, which is a story that was very resonant for me, having taken on a lot of student loans. And I just can't imagine not speaking any English and learning about like formaldehyde, like it was just like, I was like, this guy has grit in the same way that I do. And so I think one of the key lessons for you to take away as you think about who even could be a good co-founder pairing, it starts first with finding really shared core values. And it was obviously that like immigrant like work ethic that I think brought us together in the first place. But then there was this other moment when we were about to decide whether to sign the deal and work together. I really pushed you on understanding if you wanted to be one of the best as well. And there's this moment, I remember asking Vitali the question, something like, how do I know like that you're gonna crush it? There's some sort of question like that. And I can't remember the exact words that Vitali gave me, but I can still remember the energy of it. It was just something along the lines of like, John, I'm one of the best at what I do. And there's a certain energy when you work with people like that. It's not arrogance, it's not like false perception or like inflated confidence, but it's like such fundamental grounded integrity in terms of like, I'm so factually and in my reality, objectively, the best of the best out there. I remember hearing that energy from you, specifically about the fields that Vitali was strong in, and being like, yeah, I'm the exact same at what I do. I'm one of the best at what I do. And I think that realization of like, hey, we have the same core values around integrity, around work ethic. We have very complementary skill sets. And that there is one of the core foundations of how you should think about a successful co-founder relationship.
I resonate a lot with the self-confidence. Like I think I subconsciously experienced something similar about you and all the ways that you show up. But I think fundamentally, as we draw a lot of analogies between like co-founder relationship and romantic relationship, for example, like it's this notion where like when you're entering this codependent relationship with another person, you have to bring something to the table. And like you have to be aware of what is it you're bringing. And I think a lot of relationships that fail in any stage of life, like actually it happens because people approach it from the intent of like taking more than the giving and just kind of coming in. It's like, hey, I'm going to be successful no matter what. And I'm here because I believe that together we can go significantly farther, significantly faster. And it's like, I know what I bring.
Yep.
So I think I had that subconscious understanding and you had that subconscious understanding. And we knew that the complementary piece, which is incredibly important in the co-founder choice that we'll talk about in a moment. And it's like that complementary piece with the confidence that we bring is like, yeah, we can go significantly farther if we go together. And I think that was the final bit that gave me conviction to say yes.
I think this point is really important, actually, that you just implied, which is there's a fundamental security that we both had around our skill sets and what we could bring to the table. And so that's your job as the partner in the relationship to make sure that you're showing up with fundamental value in that way, where it was very much so we had such fundamental security and confidence in who we were and what we could bring to the table and our value that we were fine without each other, theoretically. But we also knew that this could be one of those rare 1 + 1 = 1,000 situations. And so I think the best mental model I can give you all to think about your co-founder relationships is, I love thinking about me and Vitali in the context of yin and yang. It's like such a beautiful model for life in general. But if you think about the yin and the yang and why it works so well is they're very different complementary energies in the sense that Vitali is very much so a very different person than me. And the reason why I like yin and yang as I think about a really strong co-founder relationship is because it speaks towards how clearly you two are very, very different, but still complementary. Where you have the same core values, like root you together, but then you're finding ways to like mix and match with each other where you're starting to unleash each other. And then specifically, I think the most clever and thoughtful part of the yin and yang is actually the 2 dots of the different colors on the other side. And we'll talk about more about this over time of how we've grown as co-founders as well. But what you realize is those 2 little dots in each other of the different person, those are the ways that you as co-founders actually need to grow in understanding each other and grow in the skill sets of the other. Where for me, I've learned a ton from Vitali about systems thinking, about zooming out and seeing the bigger picture rather than just being like the artist in the process. And then for you,
I learned about humans from John. I was very uninterested in the subject before.
But
the emotions,
yeah,
the inspiration, like the communication, like the leadership of humans, which like effectively every single company is just a group of individuals working towards a shared objective. Very different compared to when you work with code. And now both of our jobs is like working with humans. Like I think I've gotten like magnitudes of better observing how you.
And so I've gotten to uplevel Vitali in certain ways, and he's very much so upleveled me in a ton of different ways as well. And so if I were to summarize, in those early days of first figuring out who you even want to date as your co-founder, there are two specific things that you want to look for. Number one is, do I have the same core values as this other person? And then number two is, do we have complementary skill sets? Because one of the top mistakes that first-time founders make is that they'll decide to work with one of their best friends who actually has the same redundant skill set as them, which means that they'll struggle with ownership over time, or they're basically going to compete with each other over the same task rather than realizing, hey, for me to build a successful organization, I need to have a skill set that covers all of the different functions of a successful business.
And I think the point goes actually much farther than friendship, because I think it's a very human trait to look for something that you understand. So even if you're finding a co-founder who is not friends with you, but you like them because they are like you in a way, which oftentimes means like very overlapping skill sets. And it's like because we tend to like what we understand. To me, John at the time was like a very different human being. And
we did not understand each other at the time, yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I realized like how wise of like a choice you've made at the time, because it's like you were aware that you needed something you didn't have, while I probably did not have that awareness at the time. So it's like it landed on me like afterwards. But being able to work over like the self-limitation of, I don't want to just find someone I like, I want to work with someone that I actually need, and realizing what is the exact need that you're having besides just looking for companionship and like something that is very, very hard, like I think is one of the core like differentiating factors early on between successful and unsuccessful co-founder partners.
And so with that being said, I figured we could share with y'all some lessons that we've learned about conflict resolution through sharing the ups and downs of our experiences working together as co-founders. I think the first few months of us working together, I mean, it was just like, it was honestly great. It just feels like a blur in a good way.
Yeah, we had so much work to do, then it's like we didn't have time to have conflict. Like having time for conflict is a luxury.
And it's actually a lot easier then, because it's a lot simpler then. And it's only just two people, right? And so you're just working, at the end of the day, you're just like hustling to get your first few customers to build a product for the first time.
I remember our first conflict. Really? It was actually within the first month. Remember when we started working together, I didn't ship anything for a month.
Yeah, and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
When we started working together, I didn't ship anything for a month, and it's like my internal pace, like everything I worked before, I would ship every single day. Like it's actually very soul torturing to just work on something that is like doesn't see the light of day for such a long time. And it's like, I remember being hesitant because I was like, so I'm working with this guy, we don't know each other. And it's like, I actually haven't created like anything of value that he would relate to without ever being able to like look under the hood. But I remember like when I took over the technology, and it's like, I look at it, it's like, it was so bad.
The code base? Yeah.
There was no code base. There's one time.
Got the job done, it was making money.
There was one time you described on a call with like probably a recruiter, where you jokingly said, I built a facade of a software. That is exactly what it was.
I vibe coded before there was, years before there was vibe coding.
that you did.
It should speak towards the hustle I had as a non-technical co-founder.
And I respect you for this, because it's like somehow you made it work. But it's like, I still remember those times where it's like someone would upload a file and then they would sell it. And then they would receive the money, they would start cashing out, and then 5 hours later, they would receive an email saying, it's like, hey, your file uploaded failed. Whoever bought something from you, it's like, go talk to them. And it's like, well, now it's on me to like turn that into proper software. And it's like, well, we need to change everything that's going on under the hood without interrupting the service, because like people who were making real money back then, you couldn't just turn it down for a night or something. I remember being actually very hesitant, where like I took a walk to give you a call, and it's like, John, we need like at least one more week until I'm able to get it to a place where we can talk about anything you're excited about. And I remember feeling very hesitant. And it's like, I remember you were pissed in your voice, but you didn't like tell me. I think you extended trust a little bit at the time. And it's like, once we got past this, things were great. Like that's when the 3 months of like pre-sailing came. But that first month, and it's like, that particular moment was actually probably a very first conflict we had.
And I think the interesting thing here to note is that I'm realizing that trust in relationships is kind of like a reserve. It's a currency. And when you start out, there's very little trust because you don't know the person. And over 5 years of working together, knowing each other, you build so much trust over time. But in that moment, I'm actually curious as to why I had the trust. I actually remember the feeling of that situation and being like, well, damn, like obviously not ideal. I think I was like, I have no other choice. So that was probably the factor in my decision making.
Yeah. But there's a good component of trust. And I think some of it is like probably intuitive.
Yeah.
I wonder if it also comes from the notion of self-confidence. Like, you know, back in the day when like ChatGPT just came out and it would just confidently tell you stuff that is not true, but it's like because of how it says it, you kind of sound it's like probably true.
Yeah.
Because we communicated like with that disposition early on. That was probably helpful.
And I'm realizing one other tactical thing for y'all here is we also didn't just like sign the dotted line our lives away with each other. It was during that period that we also did basically a work trial. For most people, you wouldn't get a shotgun marriage in Vegas, right? You would have some sort of period of like living together first to make sure that you guys don't absolutely hate each other after a couple months. And so in the same sense, we had a really clear like 1.5 month work trial where we scoped, we're gonna work for a month and a half together. If this works out, then we'll like sign the dotted line and figure this out. But before then, you definitely want to find your ways to like ease into the relationship rather than just like full send.
Yeah. From my point of view, like that trial actually was not scoped at all from how I remember. We were like, let's just work together for a month and see what happens. And I remember my psychological state at the time. Like I tend to obsess over things when I'm getting onto something. John gave me access to the whole like software, including the admin permissions at the time, which is like a very like sensitive thing to do. And I was like, well, if I need to do I need that. YOLO. Worked out. And it's like once I started looking at what's going on, I was like, oh, there's so many things. There's so many things that need, and I just went for it. And it's like, I remember just working 16-hour days out of pure sheer passion because I was like, there's so many ways in which I can make it better. And I just wanted to make it better with all the business sense put aside. Like, I don't even think it was paid like at the time in any way. I just let me go work on this. It's not about money. And then we just did. And then
I had no money to pay you anyways.
But I didn't think about anything else. And it's like now that I'm looking back, like the cost of the decision once you like consume yourself like so deeply by something, like the opportunity cost is you let go of everything else. So it's like at some point you're actually leaving yourself with no choice but like to double down on going forward. So I don't know if I would give that advice necessarily to folks, but I think it worked for us.
Yeah. I'm just realizing as we reflect on this, how lucky we are that we kept making these decisions and it worked out.
Yeah.
Because there are times where like it doesn't rationally make sense, but we kept going because there was some like broader North Star gut feeling that we had, and we've ended up here. So, you know, selection bias, it's worked out so far.
Maybe one of the most important lesson that I've learned about being a founder, I think John was like one of the first people who kind of showed me the manifestation of this, like in the decision making that we do as a founder, like trusting your gut over your head. Like sometimes most things just don't make sense, but you kind of feel like drawn into a certain direction. It was very difficult for me to actually give into this notion as like highly like analytical rational person. And John is very good at it because it's like, hey John, why are we doing this?
I used to be good. Getting way worse over time as the complexities add.
I think you're letting it get into your head. But like back in the day, like I remember that I was like very surprised and impressed by how you were just willing to I just feel it. And then we go and I think at some point you just believe it to a degree
Because
where
you just will it into this world. The early stages, you just fucking will it into this world.
Another thing I learned from you.
But on the conflict resolution side, when we go at it, why do you think it works? Why do you think we're okay? Like, how do we conflict resolve in a healthy way?
Disagree and commit is something we actually practice quite often. I think another thing that we've developed over time is really recognizing what hills each of us would kind of fight on. And for example, for me, a lot of times where I'm disagreeing with you in terms of like, do I think it's the best decision for the business? Probably not. Is this the one thing that I really need to be arguing with John about, or can I just have his way? And I would just settle on that. And there would be other things that I would not settle on at all. And it's like, John describes this as like unstoppable force meets immovable.
The way I describe me and Vitali's relationship sometimes when we're just going at it is it's when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And Vitali is like this immovable object. And I'm just like, fucking, come on. Like, how do you not see this perspective? Like, why are you being so fucking dense? Like, truly just like, we're going at it. But at this point in our relationship, we also assume best intentions.
It took us a long time to figure out what the best intentions are because early on when you're seeing a person acting in a certain way, like with your model of the world, you don't necessarily think that they don't see you, but it's when you run a person's course of action through your system of value, like it gives you a very strong signal of what you believe it means. And oftentimes, if you take it a step further and it's like, can you actually walk me through how you thought about it? Like once you do that for me, and I think once I do that for you, and it's like that perspective from which the person is operating is like, I actually haven't thought about, and they actually do have a point. So it's like, it's no longer black and white. And then you learn to trust and like lean into the benefit of the doubt. And over time, you build intuition for like, what is that likely you actually don't know? So that allows when it's not us stuck with each other, but actually our people. And it's like, I'm struggling with John, and it's like, you probably have a time, it's like, hey, I'm struggling with Vitali. For us to actually play like to each other as best partners, it's like, oh, that's probably what he means. It's like, oh, you probably should ask about that.
And so I think the tactic there I would give you all is one thing we've gotten really good at over time is explaining our worldview and our context, where I think when you first start building a business, it's very easy because all the decisions are in your head. You get to make all these decisions yourself. This is like a broader management lesson too. But over time, when you work with more people, you realize that not everyone has the same exact perspective and worldview as you, right? Whether it's your co-founder or that 100th employee that just joined. And so it's increasingly important, especially in your co-founder relationship, when you guys are having disagreement and different perspectives, to take a step back and zoom out and give the context behind your decisions. So walk through, I believe this thing so vehemently because of X, Y, and Z principles, premises, assumptions, what have you. And you have to take the time to be like, why are we disagreeing? And ideally, because you picked a partner who has high integrity, who has the best of intentions, and that serves as your foundation, you're then able to work through, okay, we both really care about solving this problem. Why are we approaching it differently? And you start to, over time, hear each other. Like you can start to pre-guess how the other person is probably thinking about stuff over time. And so you start meeting in the middle much, much more quickly. And you start dying on less hills that you know the other person is gonna die on. It's like, for me, it's like, anything technology, like that's just Vitali's decision. And so you start to define these really clear areas of ownership, which is obviously hard in the beginning when you don't have that shared trust. But if you can make it long enough over time, you start to be really comfortable and just like, there are just zones that Vitali and I just like don't talk about because they're so clearly in our areas of ownership. It's just like something, maybe like sometimes we'll like flag each other, like, hey, I was like thinking about this, or like, hey, I heard this, or like this risk. But then from there, it's like, yo, you got it. Like, we're good, full trust.
And this is where the complementary skill set like is really helpful, because the closer of a skill set you have, the more in the shared areas you're going to be operating. Whereas like either of you will think that they have like an edge on the best decision. While for us, like let's say we have 70% separation, 30% overlap, like the area is actually very small. But then even when you're approaching the overlapping area, like the principle of disagree and commit helps. And it's like when you are at conflict, like who makes the final call? Having clarity around that is super helpful. But another component that's actually very valuable is just realizing that most decisions, like at the end of the day, don't really matter. Like it's a revolving door that you can like make it one way, it doesn't work, like go back, make it another way. And oftentimes making any decisions is better than making no decision or like to keep coming back. And I think once you kind of reach the level of maturity where it's like, actually most things don't really matter. You're like, you feel strongly about this, just go for it, even if you disagree.
And what this brings up for me is actually one of the most important lessons Vitali's ever taught me that's like been so core to our success in our relationship, but also my life in general has like fundamentally changed my relationships in my personal life as well. And it's something Vitali taught me through lots of conflict we went through, where there's actually this period probably 2 years ago where I was really struggling with running the business. Like I just really was broadly questioning capitalism and essentially like what I want to do with my life and all this stuff. I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. On top of like business building actually gets harder and harder over time as you get to more and more scale. And I didn't have the right skill sets at the time. It was in this moment, like Vitali's my business partner in this, right? And so I was struggling and not stepping up and growing in all the ways that I needed to. And so you came to me pretty candidly and you basically said,
I think I asked you whether you want to keep doing it. You come to one of our Sunday meetings and it's like, you have the 10-item agenda. It's like, hey, there's all of those things that we need to like get out of the way so we can make progress on anything. And John's like, are you even doing a good thing here? And I think it's actually a very vulnerable place to be in, because when you're operating like from a place of mutual respect, and I think I like, whether I'm willing or not willing to admit, like I have a lot of empathy for the struggle that you're going through. It's like, this is some very difficult stuff.
And there was a specific question you asked me that I took really personally.
I asked whether you wanted to keep being the CEO. And what you said in response to that, what's your agenda? You should put us on this separate, like on the opposite sides of the problem that we were trying to solve together. And I think it took us, 3 to 6 months probably to get out of there. Like we really personally hurt in that conversation.
Yeah. Because it was the way the question landed created a lot of distrust, right? And so I'm just processing.
It's a painful time to go back to.
Yeah, I'm realizing we've probably blurred a lot of it out because it was very painful, right? It's like one of the closest relationships in your life. We ended up in a situation where it felt very combative, where I started to, based off of that question and the positioning, was starting to distrust Vitali as my business partner.
Yeah, because of like a selfish intentions that might no longer kind of align with John's intentions like anymore, then like how can we best build something together? Because it's like fundamentally the trust is missing. And there's one thing that we've learned and is like continuously being reinforced. Like without trust, you cannot go anywhere.
Yes.
Like at all.
Yes. And so we ended up in this situation specifically to give you the lesson in a you versus me situation where I think one of the biggest lessons that I've ever learned from Vitali in our relationship, like I give Vitali full credit for this, is helping me realize like, John, it's not you versus me here. My intention here is like you and me versus the problem, which by the way, over time becomes one of the most important things you need to do as a leader or a manager, always keeping in mind with your co-founder and committing to this paradigm of, hey, it's not you versus me, it's you and me versus the problem. If you can both hold that paradigm to be true and live up to that, it will make your life so much easier.
I think it brings us back to the roots, and that reminds me of like why we wanted to do it in the first place is because together we could go significantly farther than we would go individually. And it's like reminding yourself that throughout different stages gets you to your best operating mode.
Despite us having built up enough trust and goodwill over the years, when a big moment comes and you're not foundationally in a good place already, it just collapses or breaks down the trust that you have and then creates one of those moments where you're like really on thin ice. You're like, do I like want to stay married?
But what is helpful is recognizing that everything, like both in life, any kind of relationship, the company, like happens in seasons. Like there's the high season, there is a low season. And I think that was probably the lowest of our lowest seasons that we went through. But the reason that we went through and saw each other on the other side, despite the cost that it's taken us, is actually being committed to what we're building together, being bigger than any of the individual thing and actually finding the strength in ourselves to get to the other side and like rebuild everything we've broken and get even farther beyond that. But just knowing that after winter, there is always spring and then there is summer, like that actually gives you hope and strength to keep going.
There has to be that desire to underlying have the commitment to the mission or to the relationship as well, right? You just like won't fundamentally get through the winter if you don't have that commitment. And at the end of the day, that is always your decision based off of your situation and your values and whatever you're looking for in your life. But I would say we're very happy that we got through it. Can't put words in his mouth, but I would say,
I noted yes.
Yes. But I would say we've gone through the other side on that. And one thing I've also really learned through this relationship is if you choose to get through the hard times together, on the other side, when you hit spring and summer, your relationship actually, I think, gets stronger and deeper and even more fulfilling. Because there's something to the scar tissue that adds more texture, adds more meaning, adds more context. And so it just gets more like human. And at the end of the day, like we're here to build a business and we have a mission and a job to do. But I also think we've found a way to delicately find the depth of like human experience and relationship through this journey as well, on top of the objective goal and mission to deliver a high-performing business outcome. And so I know we've talked about like the hard stuff here so far, but I also want to share with you a picture of how beautiful and incredible the experience can be as well, where if you can find someone that you can truly build a long-term relationship with, figure out how to resolve conflict together and work through all of the hard things in life that will come your way, then you get to have these incredible moments like me getting to officiate your wedding as your best man, like learning 5 minutes before that I was officiating the entire ceremony.
Flew to Shanghai with me we took a week off from running a business, like both like very important people not being present. And then we flew to London right after.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely very grateful that you actually did that for me.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely couldn't have thought of anyone else I would ask.
It was so cool standing there, seeing one of my closest it's weird to say friends. Like it's like weird to say that about your business partner and founder, but like it was so cool seeing one of the people I'm closest to, and now I've gotten to meet Pris through you and hang out with her and seeing the way that she lights you up. And the way that she like, no matter what shitstorm or hailstorm, the business where I put him through, he's always got this person to go back to like light him up. It was such a surreal moment that I like got to be the one standing in the middle between you two to officiate that.
Absolutely crushed it on the speech.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Vitali's a funny guy to roast. With that being said, I will say, independent of the big moments as well, I mean, we've gotten so many good little moments because at the end of the day, how do you build a great relationship? I think it's just two things. One is just like ambient quality time together. And then for anyone who's been in the trenches of anything, you realize like shared trauma, for lack of a better term, like shared struggle, being in the trenches with someone, you just like have those moments, even when shit hits the fan, there's just like so much bonding and being like, dude, what the fuck are we gonna do? I think about so many great memories we had of like going on ski trips together where like in between runs, we're just talking about the business and just like laughing about random shit. Or, you know, we're panicking over making payroll back in the day and like shit, like our business is going and you're like,
remember when SVB closed? It was like, my mind back then went into the problem. It's like, well, if you cut our salary and then it's like, we can.
Our
like,
bank literally collapsed on us and we had no way to make payroll.
Yeah. One of the things that I remember that's very special to me, back in the day, we were trying to figure out what it means to provide world-class service, like what it means to actually like go above and beyond. And John read a book and recommended the book to me that I read afterwards called Unreasonable Hospitality, which is like a book about the like famous restaurants in New York. One of them is 11 Madison Square, and they shared the story of how they come to like build at the time the best restaurant in New York. Maybe half a year after we've read this book, John actually surprised me and my wife when we were visiting New York, like by taking us to that restaurant where we actually got to experience the food and reconnect with everything that we've read about in the book. And it's like, oh, this is like how it's working. And they took us on the back and showed us the kitchen. And it's like just very special times that have a lot of meaning. And I'm actually realizing that a lot of things that I'm thinking back to were actually like over shared food.
Yeah.
The restaurants that we went to, like you showed me like a lot of food that I don't think I tried uni before you got that for us. Pris would not like to hear that. The other thing that is very memorable for me, a couple of years ago, we went to Mammoth. I was just learning to snowboard at the time. It was like my second or third time. John was like pretty good at skiing. He would never admit it, but he's pretty good. And then you were patient, just waiting for me, like hitting the slopes with my butt like five times ago. And we spent a weekend there in Mammoth, and then we spent a lot of time talking about the business on the lift chairs and just struggling downhill for me and probably enjoying it for John. And the drives back and forth, like 5 hours quality time in the car. A lot of good memories.
Really good. And so whether it's us sharing a meal, talking to the camera like idiots, just trying to share our journey so that you all can have a better experience yourselves, or it's the big moments, the weddings, the trips, or it's just all those shared in-between moments of just like dealing with the chaos, or just like...
Did we tell them how we sleep in the same bed?
No. On work-off sites, to save money, we still only get a single room for ourselves and we share the bed. So... we didn't. Or it's just like seeing you on a random Tuesday, even for like a brief 5 minutes. My hope is that in this experience of building a company and all the shit that comes with it, you get to have like even a taste of this like incredible human experience we've had. And so if there's anything I leave you with, it is the best of luck to get to find yourself a Vitali in your journey.
If you find yourself a John, you'll be incredibly lucky. If you're in the beginning of your journey looking for a co-founder, do this few things. Number one, write down on a piece of paper exactly what kind of person you're looking for. Anything is possible. Look inwards and understand what is that you're really good at. That's something that you can take care of yourself, and figure out what is that you are lacking that you still need for the success of the business. Those are the qualities that you're looking for in your co-founder. And if you're clear on that, you'll start noticing those in people you meet. Meet as many people as you can, ask for introductions, go places where co-founders hang out. Meet someone that you're excited to work with, and commit to spending some time with them working on something tangible. It's actually very difficult to evaluate the person until you actually get to see like what they are, like do they show up on time? Like do they wake up early? Like do they work hard? You can only experience this by like going through the process with them. So just pretend that you're working together, pick an objective, let them do their thing, and just go in that direction. The observations are going to be like everything you need. And then the third thing that I think is incredibly important, as you are spending time with them, look for deeper why on why they want to build a company, why they want to work with you, because that why is what's going to be driving them when times are at their lowest. And it's having that why that helped us get to, like, from our lowest point to back on track and to be thriving afterwards.
You fucking nailed it, dude. And just to add to that, you want to also make sure that you, as one of the partners in the relationship, are constantly asking yourself, how am I showing up to this situation? How might I be contributing to the chaos or the confusion or the tension? And how can I be growing and showing up even better in this relationship and partnership? Because I will say that there's one thing that I think Vitali and I are constantly implicitly asking ourselves in each of our interactions as we continue to work together. Because I cannot describe to you how different the people that we needed to be when we first started versus the people and all the pressure and stress that we need to be now at this next stage, building a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And so here's a cheers to the next 5 years. Oh, okay.